Welcome to Raw Podcast 3. I am your host, Jennifer Tylervite, and here today I'm just literally going to be raw with you, just spewing out what comes to mind. And what comes to mind right now is topics such as Jehovah's Witnesses, topics such as romance, topics such as being an ex-witness, changing religion, changing thoughts, mental health, things like this. Now, I am a dating and relationships coach. I would prefer to use the word instructor, but in Google search terms, that's not very common. Do forgive me for any car sounds in the background because I am on a walk right now. You might even hear me with the footsteps. But that's all well and dandy. I imagine you'll probably be listening to me on your couch or somewhere quiet while you're passing the time, like I do, and you're just watching YouTube all the time or listening to YouTube. This is what my family members do quite a lot, is we don't even watch the videos. We just put earphones in and we listen to them for hours, perhaps too many hours. And this is what I'm assuming that you're doing right now too. And this isn't structured. I'm just being raw with you right now. As I stated earlier, and you'll have to forgive these cars passing by me, it's going to be a little bit noisy. This podcast probably won't go for longer than 30 minutes. If it does, kudos to me if I can make it that far. But I won't be editing this video either because you can hear it in my voice. I am so much more confident than I've ever been in ages. And this is despite the circumstances. This is despite my past. This is despite the history. This is despite traumas. This is despite recent happenings in the last few years. Things that I don't really talk about. Perhaps it's not really a good idea to talk about your own personal life. But in my case right now, I'll touch on a religious aspect. And that is not being a Jehovah's Witness anymore. Not officially. I guess I am classified as an ex-JW. There's a slight tanginess to the title. You know, I can't explain that. It's not like something to be necessarily proud of, but it's like if you've been through the darkness or if you've been through the fire, then you have that badge. And even if you don't wear the badge anymore, you still had possession of the badge and now you wear a new badge. It's a strange feeling. But I imagine many people who are not witnesses, they do give up entirely on the faith. They give up on God and all that kind of stuff. But not everyone does this. And I'm not one of those people. I do have a strong belief in God, and it doesn't really waver much, even if I don't understand all things. Who ever has understood all things in life? Leonardo da Vinci? You got to be kidding me, man. And why am I thinking about the Jehovah's Witness thing? It's because I was just thinking about like how it can affect you mentally, because the religion is kind of fear-based, but it's the most subtle and underlying stuff. And you wouldn't even know that it affected you, or it warps the way you see the world. But I was just thinking, like a passing thought, you know. We have a joke, an inside joke in the family. What would the GB say? What would the governing body say in relation to anything we do? It's a joke because they would normally condemn something that we do. Have a birthday with the family member, you know, it's something that we actually kind of do. What would the GB say? They wouldn't be very happy about that, and that's just the inside joke. Some witnesses you might find actually do this in secret, having birthdays and stuff. But these birthdays, the typical kind of shizer that you see on TV and in movies, that's not what we do. It's just like, yeah, we get presents and stuff like that. Sometimes we even miss out on these things because we're just not even in the area. Maybe we're not even in the same country. But it's not like we're wearing party hats and weird ass shit. It's just to the best of our ability, we buy each other gifts that we believe are going to be meaningful and impact each other. And that's what that's about. But another thing is the movies, right? What would the GB say about watching certain movies? Well, it's true that you do want to be using your discernment, especially if you're considering yourself a moral person. You want to be mindful about what you're consuming, and hopefully that is something that you already do. But do be aware that some movies can hypnotize you without really realizing it. Often, for example, in romantic settings, if there's cheating or romantic drama where there's more than one partner and all this kind of stuff, even, things like sex before marriage, etc., it's like, okay, you can take that step far, but as a dating and relationship coach, if you agree or have no problem with certain aspects in movies and video games, I get there's fantasies, I get that there's different aspects that could be explored or whatever, but it's like these days, having so many homosexual individuals prominent in today's media, it is very concerning. That is probably the most common thing that we're seeing. Now there's the trans, Shizer, and all that kind of stuff. I have to forgive the passing cars. But me, myself, I play what would be considered violent video games. And I really enjoy them. Now, growing up, there were times in my childhood where, despite being bought these games, I would have them thrown away. I don't know why. It was just as a form of punishment. I was kind of punished a lot as a kid. I've forgiven all this stuff now, but sometimes it's interesting to look back at with a fresh lens and see how that kind of attitude affected me growing up. I had this fear a lot, actually, because a lot of the time when I was growing up, I was punished severely. I was kicked out of home a lot. Being together with the certain family members was kind of prevented, where my mother would say something like, I can't stand having you around, you're going to have to go live with your father, or something like that. And that was kind of a normal thing. Constantly being threatened to, not constantly, but there were certain times where I'd be threatened to be kicked out of the house and things like that. And I've just been reflecting on it on several passing months and noticing how that actually affected me in my relationships and the way I see the world. And it's kind of interesting if you can somehow look back at that, and you'll find interesting patterns in your behavior that led you to where you are today. It's very interesting, because subconsciously you try to prevent the very thing that you're afraid of, but yet it's this intense desire to prevent the problem which actually continues to bring more of the problem about. And that's why in one of my TikToks that I uploaded probably a year or two ago, stating that something along the lines of, for you to be in possession of the thing that you want, it needs to somehow not be able to be taken away from you. And I don't know if that makes sense right now, but I recall one episode with my mother where she was kind of threatening to kick me out. And I said, okay. I literally just didn't care. I was prepared to just accept that and just go. Now, I was I think I was in my early 20s at the time. I can't recall exactly when this happened. But she's like, oh, really? Okay. It completely flipped the whole dynamic. It wasn't aggressive or anything. It just completely calmed down and flipped. My mother, this is a podcast for my mother to be listening to, by the way. So if you are listening to this, mother, this isn't for you. This is a dating relationships channel, and I'm just doing a podcast. So there you go. But what we're doing in these podcasts, or at least in this one, I'm just deep diving into subconscious topics, really. Now, anyway, when my mother said she was going to kick me out, yeah, I said okay. I recall this interaction being one of the most important interactions that is probably the most powerful response you could give, is just saying okay, knowing that you are prepared to live out whatever is given to you, in a sense. Even if I was kicked out, it's like I would have been like, okay, I was literally prepared in that moment. And so the whole point of being threatened to be kicked out, etc., is because it's being used as leverage against you. And this is my point. It's being used as leverage against you to have something taken from you, as a means to control you. I'm not saying my mother was necessarily controlling. We had different riffraffs, but there was something about the interaction, quite a lot. It is, yeah, many of these things are meant to control or punish, but that's it. So if you want someone to not control you necessarily, you need to do what I did, in a sense, and have it so that no leverage can actually be used against you. Some people, even today, I wondered, could my siblings be offered more bonus cash to compel them to want to work with us on a job on an island? But my father said that they are not really swayed by money. And that's actually kind of unfortunate, because your whole relationship with money, their relationship with money, is subconsciously affected, in a sense. I don't know why. It could be an upbringing, Jehovah's Witness upbringing. I don't know. I don't want to like exactly blame and point fingers, but there probably is some influence in that, because someone who believes inherently that money is evil, the root of evil, the Bible says it. The Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil. But that's the thing. It's like at the expense of human life, at the expense of your own integrity for the sake of money. That is evil. For the sake of your own consciousness, for the sake of your relationship with God, you choose money. You can have both money and God, right? But it should not be at the cost or expense of your own integrity and God, etc. And that's the thing about growing up as a J-dub. We weren't like super heavily involved. We were kind of more casual. And my religious beliefs are firmly kind of still roughly the same with the traditional J-dub view of the world, in the sense of the apocalypse. I already did touch up on this in my last podcast, I think. And, you know, I do believe in the apocalypse and things like this, because that's what Revelation's all about. That's what Matthew chapter 24 is all about. That's what the book of Daniel's about, things like that. And we've been seeing evidence of this with the Koof jabs being a big warm-up for the mark of the beast, etc. But I do have, I've already kind of mentioned already that I have a new sort of perspective on things since I learned about Neville Goddard. He's a completely different person. You'd have to look into yourself. Literally, I've read all his books multiple times and listened to all of his podcasts or his lectures. I've listened to them all now. And I feel confident that he has changed my life. And it's given me this incredible itch and scratch to want to read the Bible itself, because he himself used the Bible as his primary source for the topic of manifestation. That's what he literally is. If Michael Jackson is the king of pop, Elvis Presley is the king of rock. If Jesus is the king of the Jews, then Neville Goddard is the king of manifestation there. He seems to be the master using primarily the Bible, other than some poets, to help illustrate different passages. Don't mind me if I'm a bit silent, because I'm just thinking about what to say next, what's on my mind. I was part of a program that is actually part of what I wanted to talk about. I was part of a program, a relationships program, and I kind of feel some resentment towards it. I feel a bit betrayed by it, I suppose. I guess there's things I could look into in my soul and my heart as to why I feel that way. But in this case, I just thought about something in relation to that program, and that is the so-called taking of action. Take action. This is something you hear in hustle culture all the time. This is why YouTube is potentially such a toxic place now. And the whole subject of self-improvement is potentially just contaminated with endless mind washing of that you're not good enough, essentially. And you have to take action, be the 1%. But the taking action, I thought about this. It's just change your thinking. Take action, change your thinking, change your focus, and what's the process? You've got to follow the process. What's the process? The process is just change your thinking. Primarily, you change your perspective, you change your focus, you change the direction of your awareness. This is the action, and this is the juicy gem that I wanted to basically record now, because that's the juicy gem. You've got to take action. Well, what are you supposed to do? Like build this frickin' monument with bricks? You've got to take action. What does it mean? You shout out to your friends that your ex-misso is your misso. Like, I can't remember that other relationship coach's name, David Blake or something like that. I don't know. I remember buying his course once, and he's like, it's your woman, your woman. It was really cringe. It's a passing car. So that is really it. That's what so many of these different coaches are trying to convey as well. They are trying to change your perspective, change your consciousness, which sits behind the perspective. Consciousness and awareness, kind of the same thing. That's who you actually are, by the way. If you didn't know, you are a faceless, formless awareness. You are a conscious entity occupying a human vessel. That is a very interesting fact. Very spiritual one. Very spiritual. But what to do with that information? That is the question. The real question is that this is the truth, and the truth is you have to change your thinking by changing the direction of your awareness, by changing your focus, which is your tunneled or funneled consciousness, awareness. A bit like a flashlight in a dark type of warehouse. The flashlight, which is often referred to as the light in the Bible, you are the light, you are the waters. You change the direction of the light, and I suppose you increase in awareness. You bring more into existence that what you focus on. And this is the interesting thing about the Bible and Neville Goddard and the stuff that's in religion. I don't know, I've just never heard about it before, but it makes so much more sense when you look into it, when you see the Bible this way, this very magical perspective straight from the Bible. Neville Goddard said you're going to be like Jesus and say that it's not strange to feel as though you are one with God, because God is consciousness. It's kind of strange, but it makes kind of sense. when you think about it. And what's been kind of like making me feel really happy now is that I had a haircut the other day. It's the best haircut I've ever had in years. A bit of a rock star type of look. And I've never felt, it was the most expensive, not the most expensive haircut. I've had $500 haircuts, but this one was like $150. And I look like a rock star now. My hair's not flying in my face. I don't look like Jesus anymore. To tell you the truth, I kind of look like Jesus a lot. But something was off about my look. I just wasn't very happy for a long time. And I kept getting told that I look homeless, especially when I dressed very awfully. But now, now I just, well, obviously I dress great and I feel great. But since this haircut, I was reflecting on how did I manifest this haircut? I'm playing Minecraft now these days too. How did I manifest this tower that I built in Minecraft? And it's not like this passing thought necessarily. It's not like this single thought. It's a thought that you live in. It's something that you see. You live in that idea. Now, there's probably a part in the process somewhere where you make a decision or something like that. These are my own active contributions. But it's interesting that for these manifestations to come about, to be drawn out into reality, was that I lived in them. As I walked by the shops on the street, I looked at myself in the reflection, literally the reflection in the windows, and I imagined myself with a certain haircut. I used Gemini AI, ChatGPT, to try and make images of a certain hairstyle I wanted. It didn't quite look right on the AI. AI kind of made it look horrible. But I was exploring different angles of myself. I was looking at myself from different angles. And I lived in this. Now, I didn't, like, who knows how the manifestation was going to come about? Obviously, it was going to be a barber that did it. Which barber? Who knows? It does help to be as specific as possible, I have found. To be as specific as possible in knowing what you want, where you're going, etc. But it doesn't always have to be super specific. It doesn't always have to be the specific barber, because I went to the neighboring barber. The one I was thinking about was closed, so I went to the neighboring one, and he did a fantastic job. I manifested new Michelin tires for my Ute, which is a car, by the way, in Australia. It's like a truck car. And I really like Michelin tires because they feel nice and they're good in the rain. But how I was going to manifest them? There's different ways to skin a cat. You know, someone else could pay for it for me, or I could just be given the money and I'll just pay the money myself. Does it really matter how it's going to come about as long as the job gets done? Some things are within your locus of control, some things are not. And to the degree that they are, perhaps some areas you have more control over than so you do others. And it's interesting because these thoughts, it now kind of makes more sense to me how to manifest, how to so-called think, how to so-called follow the process, how to so-called take action. Fucking take action, my fucking ass. Taking action, my fucking ass. It's change your thinking. Change the way you think. And the way you think is to dwell in a different living place in your mind. You dwell in a place in your mind. And so now if I was manifesting a romantic interest, for example, based on my haircut analogy, my Minecraft tower analogy, perhaps even my tires analogy, you just live in that place. You dwell in that mental place. And unlike these these three manifestations I've mentioned so far, Minecraft Tower, haircut, Michelin tires, I was not necessarily anxious about them showing up. I didn't necessarily know when they would show up. I just know that they would show up. Perhaps I knew on a weekend or a certain day they were more likely to appear. But to be anxious about something, if I recall from the Bible, it does mean that you are living in the future, but you are, it's not like you're present. You're not present. If you're anxious, you're not present. You're future focused in the negative way. If you're depressed, you're past focused. You're not present. You're past focused in a negative way. And so being present while still being focused on the desire, the thing that you want, your future in a sense, in your mind you make it now because you picture it, you visualize it, you experience it, you breathe it, touch it, smell it, taste it now in your mental reality or your spiritual reality. It kind of depends. The two kind of go along hand in hand. And you kind of just live in that. You live in that. I purchased 4 Xbox ROG Ally X's for my siblings and bought them 2 copies each for Steam and Xbox, Battlefield 6 each. And I remember, I got one, the very first one out of the 4, and I had to think of the cars. I was like, damn, I just, 3 more to go. Obviously, it took a bit of chipping away, but when I was anxious about not having the other 3, I had to completely stop thinking about that, right? Because I already knew exactly what I wanted. There was no need to feel anxious about it. So I recall in my own experience, this is how you manifest things. This is how you bring things into fruition. You know exactly what you want. Sure, you can picture it, and you just live in that, but you don't be anxious about it. And if you are feeling anxious about it, then you just kind of stop. You just stop. Not in the sense of giving up, but you just stop thinking about it, knowing that at some point it will appear. And so perhaps you can try this with your own manifestation in the sense of a girlfriend or a boyfriend. If you're a lass, you want a dude. If you're a dude, you probably want a lass. That's the idea. And I recall, is this true in my own experience? It's probably not an answer that I'll give now, because I'm still reflecting on it. But I suppose it may be true, because there were certain experiences I have had where I was dwelling perhaps in a place of fear, which led to the downfall of certain relationships. Perhaps I was dwelling in a place of communication, and a month out of nowhere, it seemed risible. Something happened, something good. But then when my focus swayed and I was dwelling in this place of fear, even though my hunches were turning out to be correct, these hunches were also produced by my own fears in which I was dwelling. And I have these other hunches, right, which are completely the opposite. And if I follow my own advice, I just have to know that these hunches, positive hunches, will just appear out of nowhere. And I just need not be anxious about when or where. I have certain control, and I can just sort of relax the control. That's the end of this podcast for now. I'm in town. I'm going to be buying some groceries, having some num-num. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned something new. And skidios.